everyone. Welcome to Learn English with Podcast. I'm Nikki.
And I'm Tony. Today we have a really fun topic for you. We're going to talk about lies, the most absurd lies you have told. It's going to be hilarious.
Yes, Tony. I think everyone has told a silly lie at some point. It's a part of being human, right?
Absolutely. And sometimes these lies can be really funny. Nikki, have you ever told an absurd lie?
Oh, yes. I remember when I was a kid. I told my mom that I had a twin sister who lived in the attic. I said she only came out at night.
Wow, Nikki. That's a good one. What did your mom say?
She didn't believe me, of course. She just laughed and told me I had a big imagination. How about you, Tony? Have you ever told a crazy lie?
Oh, for sure. When I was in school, I told my classmates that I had a pet dragon. I even drew pictures of it and gave it a name, Sparky.
Ha ha ha, Sparky the dragon. Did anyone believe you?
Some of the younger kids did, but the older kids knew I was just making it up. It was all in good fun.
It's amazing what kids will believe. And even as adults, we sometimes tell little lies to make life more interesting.
Yes. Sometimes we lie to avoid trouble, and other times just to make people laugh. Today we're going to hear from some guests who will share their own funny stories about lies they have told.
Right, Tony. We have 3 guests with us today, and they all have some great stories to share. But before we bring them on, let's talk a bit more about why people tell lies.
Sure, Nikki. People tell lies for many reasons. Sometimes it's to avoid getting into trouble. Other times it's to make themselves look better. And sometimes it's just for fun.
Yes, and learning to understand these reasons can help us improve our English too. When we hear stories and try to understand why someone might lie, it helps us learn new words and phrases.
Exactly, Nikki. And it's important to remember that not all lies are bad. Some are just harmless fun, like our stories about the twin sister and the pet dragon.
That's true. And telling these stories helps us practice speaking and listening in English. So, listeners, get ready to laugh and learn with us today.
All right, so let's get started with our first guest.
We're excited to introduce our first guest today. Her name is Lisa. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Nikki and Tony. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you here, Lisa. So, can you tell us about an absurd lie you have told?
Sure. When I was about 10 years old, I told my classmates that I was a secret agent. I said I worked for a secret government agency.
Wow, a secret agent. That's a big lie. What made you tell that story?
Well, I was watching a lot of spy movies at that time. I thought it would be cool to pretend I was a spy.
Did anyone believe you?
Actually, yes. Some of my classmates believed me. I even made up missions and told them I had special gadgets.
That's amazing. Did you have a special spy name?
Yes, I called myself Agent L. I told them it stood for Lisa.
How long did this lie go on?
It lasted for about a month. Then one of my friends found out I was just making it up. She told everyone, and we all had a good laugh about it.
Did you get into trouble for lying?
Not really. The teachers thought it was funny, and my parents just told me to be honest next time.
That's a great story, Lisa. Do you think telling that lie helped you in any way?
Yes, it did. It helped me make friends and improve my storytelling skills. And now it's a funny memory I can share.
That's a wonderful way to look at it. Sometimes even lies can teach us something.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing your story, Lisa. It was really fun to hear about Agent L and your secret missions.
Thanks for inviting me. I enjoyed sharing it with you.
All right, listeners, that was Lisa with her funny story about being a secret agent. Now, let's talk a little more about why we might tell such lies.
Good idea, Nikki. Sometimes we tell lies to make ourselves feel more interesting or to fit in with a group.
Yes, and other times it's just about having fun and using our imagination. Like Lisa's story about being a secret agent.
And it's important to remember that while lying isn't usually good, telling a fun story now and then can help us connect with others and learn new things.
Exactly, Tony. And learning to understand these stories in English can help us improve our language skills.
All right, it's time to have our next guest with another funny story.
We have our second guest with us now. His name is David. Hi, David.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, David. It's great to have you here. So, can you tell us about an absurd lie you have told?
Sure. This happened a few years ago. I was at a party, and someone asked me what I do for a living. For some reason, I decided to tell them I was an astronaut.
Wow, an astronaut. That's a big lie, David. Why did you say that?
Well, I thought it would be funny. Plus, I was tired of talking about my real job as an accountant. Being an astronaut sounded much more exciting.
I can imagine. What did people say when you told them?
They were really impressed. They started asking me all kinds of questions about space and my missions.
Oh no. Did you know enough about space to answer their questions?
Not really. I had to make up a lot of stuff on the spot. I talked about floating in zero gravity and seeing Earth from space. I even made up a mission to Mars.
Wow, that's impressive. Did anyone suspect you were lying?
Not at first, but then someone at the party was a big space enthusiast. He started asking very detailed questions that I couldn't answer.
Uh-oh. What did you do?
I tried to keep up the lie, but it became clear I didn't know what I was talking about. Eventually, I had to admit I was joking.
How did everyone react?
Most people laughed. They thought it was funny that I had kept the lie going for so long. But the space enthusiast wasn't too happy. He thought I was making fun of his passion.
Did you get into trouble for lying?
Not really. It was a casual party, and everyone understood it was just a joke. But I did learn to be careful about telling such big lies in the future.
That's a great story, David. Do you think telling that lie taught you anything?
Yes, it did. It taught me to think about the consequences of my words. And it also reminded me that honesty is usually the best policy.
Very true, David. Sometimes lies can be funny, but they can also cause problems.
Thanks for sharing your story, David. It was really entertaining to hear about your astronaut adventures.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed sharing it.
All right, listeners, that was David with his funny story about pretending to be an astronaut. Now, let's talk a little more about why we might tell such lies.
Good idea, Nikki. Sometimes we tell lies to make ourselves seem more interesting or to avoid talking about something boring.
Yes, and other times it's just to have a bit of fun and see how people react. Like David's story about being an astronaut.
And it's important to remember that while lying isn't usually good, telling a fun story now and then can help us connect with others and learn new things.
Exactly, Tony. And learning to understand these stories in English can help us improve our language skills.
All right, we'll have our next guest with another funny story.
We have our third and final guest with us now. Her name is Sarah. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Nikki and Tony.
Hi, Sarah. We're glad to have you. So, can you tell us about an absurd lie you have told?
Sure. This happened last year. I went on a blind date, and I told the guy that I was a famous food critic.
A famous food critic?
That sounds interesting. Why did you say that?
Well, I was nervous about the date, and I wanted to sound more interesting. So, I made up this big story.
Wow, Sarah. Did he believe you?
Oh, yes. He was really impressed. He started asking me all sorts of questions about the best restaurants and my favorite dishes.
Did you know enough about food to answer his questions?
Not really. I like food, but I'm not an expert. I had to make up a lot of things on the spot. I talked about fancy restaurants and exotic dishes I had never even tried.
Did you manage to keep the lie going?
At first, yes. But then he asked me to recommend a good restaurant nearby. I panicked and named the first place that came to mind, which was a fast food burger joint.
Oh no. What did he say?
He was surprised and asked if I was serious. I tried to cover it up by saying that even food critics love a good burger sometimes. But he started to get suspicious.
Did you eventually tell him the truth?
Yes, I did. I couldn't keep the lie going any longer. I told him I wasn't really a food critic and that I just wanted to make a good impression.
How did he react?
He was a bit shocked at first, but then he laughed. He said he appreciated my honesty and that it was okay. We ended up having a fun time anyway.
That's a great story, Sarah. Do you think telling that lie taught you anything?
Yes, it did. It taught me that it's better to be myself and be honest from the start. People appreciate authenticity more than made-up stories.
Very true, Sarah. Sometimes lies can seem like a good idea, but honesty is always the best policy.
Thanks for sharing your story, Sarah. It was really fun to hear about your food critic adventure.
Thanks to you. I enjoyed sharing it.
All right, listeners, that was Sarah with her funny story about pretending to be a famous food critic. Now, let's talk a little more about why we might tell such lies.
Good idea, Nikki. Sometimes we tell lies because we want to impress someone or make a good impression. But as Sarah's story shows, it's often better to just be ourselves.
Yes, and other times we lie because we're afraid of what people might think if we tell the truth. But being honest can help us build stronger relationships.
Exactly. And learning to understand these stories in English can help us improve our language skills and communicate better.
All right, we have a special treat for you. We have an extra guest with us today who has an incredibly interesting story to share. His name is Alex. Hi, Alex.
Hi, Nikki. Hi, Tony. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to share my story.
Hi, Alex. We're glad you could join us. So, tell us about the most interesting lie you have ever told.
All right. This one is a bit wild. A few years ago, I was traveling in Europe and ended up in a small town in Italy. I told the locals that I was a famous singer from America.
A famous singer?
That's a big lie. What made you tell that story?
I was backpacking and felt a bit lonely. I thought it would be fun to have a different identity for a while. I wanted to see what it was like to be a celebrity.
Did the locals believe you?
Yes, they did. They were so excited. They asked me to sing for them, and I panicked because I'm not a great singer. But I went ahead and sang a few songs anyway.
Wow, how did that go?
Surprisingly well. They were very kind and supportive, even though my singing wasn't great. They invited me to a local festival to perform.
That sounds amazing. Did you perform at the festival?
Yes, I did. I sang a few songs and even tried to dance a bit. The crowd loved it. They treated me like a real celebrity, asking for autographs and taking pictures with me.
That's incredible, Alex. Did you feel guilty about lying?
A little bit, yes. But it was such a unique experience. I made sure to leave on a positive note, telling them how much I appreciated their kindness.
Did you ever tell them the truth?
No, I didn't. I left the town the next day and continued my travels. It was a fun, short-lived adventure that I'll never forget.
What a story, Alex. Do you think telling that lie taught you anything?
Yes. It taught me that people can be incredibly kind and welcoming. It also showed me the power of stories and how they can connect us with others, even if they're not entirely true.
That's a wonderful insight, Alex. Your story is a great example of how lies can sometimes lead to unexpected and positive experiences.
Thanks for sharing your amazing story, Alex. It was really fun to hear about your adventure as a famous singer.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed sharing it with you.
All right, listeners, that was Alex with her fascinating story about pretending to be a famous singer. Now, let's talk a little more about why we might tell such lies.
Good idea, Tony. Sometimes, we tell lies to escape our reality or to experience something different. But as Alex's story shows, it's often about connecting with people and having unique experiences.
Yes, and while lying isn't usually good, it can sometimes lead to interesting and memorable moments. The key is to be mindful of the impact our lies can have on others.
Exactly. And learning to understand these stories in English can help us improve our language skills and communicate better.
All right, it's time for talk about some new words we learned today and wrap up our show.
We hope you've enjoyed the stories we've heard today. Before we wrap up, Tony and I want to go over some advanced words and phrases we've learned during the podcast.
That's right, Nikki. We picked 7 key words that might be a bit more advanced, but they're very useful. Let's start with the first one. Fabricate.
Fabricate means to invent or concoct something, typically with deceitful intent. For example, David fabricated a story about being an astronaut. Can you repeat it with me? Fabricate.
Fabricate. Great. Our second word is embellish.
Embellish means to make a story or statement more interesting by adding extra details that are often untrue. For example, Lisa embellished her spy story with special gadgets and missions. Let's say it together. Embellish.
Embellish. Perfect. The third word is charade.
Charade refers to an act or event that is clearly false but is meant to deceive others. Sarah's act of being a food critic was quite a charade. Repeat after me. Charade.
Charade. Good job. Our fourth word is pretense.
Pretense means an attempt to make something that is not the case appear true. Alex's pretense of being a famous singer was quite elaborate. Say it with us. Pretense.
Pretense. Excellent. The fifth word is plausible.
Plausible means something that seems reasonable or probable. David's initial story about being an astronaut sounded plausible to his friends. Let's say it together. Plausible.
Plausible. Great. The sixth word is exaggerate.
Exaggerate means to represent something as being larger, better, or worse than it really is. Sarah exaggerated her knowledge about food to impress her date. Repeat after me. Exaggerate.
Exaggerate. Excellent. And our final word for today is impromptu.
Impromptu means done without being planned or rehearsed. Alex's impromptu performance at the festival was both daring and memorable. Let's say it together. Impromptu.
Impromptu. Wonderful. Now let's use these words in sentences related to our stories.
Sure, Tony. For example, David fabricated an entire identity as an astronaut, and despite the charade, his story initially seemed plausible to his friends.
Perfect. Or, Lisa embellished her secret agent story with so many details that it became an elaborate pretense, but her friends eventually found out the truth.
Excellent sentences, Tony. And Sarah's exaggerated claims about being a food critic turned into a funny impromptu experience that taught her the importance of honesty.
Exactly, Nikki. Practicing these words in context helps us remember them better.
We hope these new words help you improve your English, and that you had fun with us today.
Yes. Thanks to all our guests, Lisa, David, Sarah, and Alex, for sharing their hilarious and interesting stories with us.
And thank you, listeners, for joining us on Learn English with Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show and learned something new.
Don't forget to practice using the new words we learned today. And remember, honesty is usually the best policy, but sometimes a funny lie can make for a great story.
Absolutely. See you next time, everyone. Keep learning and keep laughing.
Bye for now.
Bye.